Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. For me, it's evening. Stefan Gentz here from Adobe in Germany, and I'm happy to welcome you to this virtual lunch and learn from topics to content fragments. What are we going to talk about today? When we think of technical content and knowledge content, documentation content, we always think of a PDF maybe that is downloadable from a web server with a technical documentation, or maybe a printout. But along this customer journey, technical documentation is, of course, much more than that. And we see technical documentation today also in online portals, support portals. We see it in knowledge bases. We see it in customer support centers and things like that. But technical documentation and content that is stored in the technical documentation can be used today in many other ways, in more creative ways than we are used to traditionally. And one thing is that we can today blend technical documentation or technical content that is usually in a separated support portal or documentation portal, and blend the content also with the marketing content, and blend marketing content with technical communication content, so that customers can get a more unified experience and a more consistent experience, where the borders, the lines between technical content and marketing content are sort of a little bit blurring and merging. Just think of something simple like a table of contents, a table of technical data. I'm a too technical documentation guy. Table of contents, a table of technical data. And this technical data can reside or be hosted in the technical documentation, but that table of technical data could, for example, be also on a product page, or some assistive content, how to replace a battery or whatever, could also be part of the marketing website and part of the customer experience that people have when they go to the marketing website. But it could also be, and usually is, part of the technical documentation content. This is something we're going to talk about today, how to merge and blend technical content and marketing content. And we have built some exciting features into AEM guides and AEM that make this possible for you as a AEM customer. And for this, we have invited Dhilip K, the Group Product Manager at Adobe, and Manik Bhalla. Dhilip manages the product management team for Adobe Experience Manager Guides, and he's an industry veteran with about 22 years of industry experience, and has worked for companies like Wipro and Microsoft, and is with Adobe in the AEM Guides team for quite some time now. And Manik is working as a product manager for Adobe Experience Manager Guides for, I think, about 1.5 years. Is that correct, Manik?
Right, correct.
Yeah. So welcome to the club, Dhilip and Manik, and the stage is all yours. With that, I hand over to Dhilip and Manik.
Hey, thanks, Stefan, and it's always a pleasure to have you as a host. I think I've seen that in Beta World, and now this is the second time. Welcome all. As Stefan said, I think we have participants from across the globe. So all three time zones covered for us, and we are based out of India, both me and Manik. So just for FYI, so it's sort of dinner and learn for us. So you guys have the lunch, we have the dinner, and we learn all together. So that's probably what the intent is. The more important is that we have some learning and fun all together in this close to about 45 minutes of our conversation. So what have we got? I think this is a very interesting world, as the dictum says, the twain shall never meet. I think. Does technical and marketing content or communication really come together? I think that's been probably a big challenge, which not only now, I think maybe time immemorial. I think that's something which has been always a challenge. And I think the entire piece of how these two things can come together is something I want to put that as a question mark, which I think most of you are veterans, some of you are in the industry for a while now. What I saw from profiles of people who have come in. And we will try and get into a journey of really trying to see is that something which we can actually solve for. And you will find a very interesting use case which I think I'm going to run through today. And there are some exciting questions which I have for you towards the middle of the conversation. But today I think I'm just going to run you through a journey and what this blending content means and what the content fragment piece means. Firstly, we need to answer the question of why that entire piece has to come together. Because if you don't answer the why, I think the hows and the other things are probably meaningless to my view. And as a product manager, as someone who sort of spends a lot of time with customers between me and Manik and the entire team, the why becomes a very, very critical element of any of the product features which we deliver. And some of these things which have got multidisciplinary, multi-department blending, which essentially happens here, it's important to start with the why question here. And so I thought I'll quickly take you to a journey of buying a car, and we took this example because most of us in our lives have either gone ahead and done this exercise or in the process of doing it, and we will continue to do this as part of our evolution as we go along in our lives. So essentially, if you look at buying a journey of a car, and a person like me who is probably a little more emotional, not very worried about the technical specs of it, will probably go and kind of immerse myself in the advertisements or even in the nice marquees which come on the screen of a website of a car company, and I'll end up buying a car. And somebody like a Manik, who is probably a bit more technical, he wants to go a bit deep, wants to understand what the car does. And again, he has his own limitations understanding technology. And then there we have this interesting person with us, Stefan, who's German. So I need to say less or more. He can actually go ahead and really play around the technology, the technical specs of it, and go deep into some of those stuff. So that's something which you'll figure out that somebody like him just wants to go deep into the technical aspects of a car, especially when he's buying one. So we all have varied degrees of purchasing conversations when we go and look at it. So this entire blending is actually going to be a very nice help for almost all three of us as we go into our journey. So essentially, somebody like me, as I said, look at the researching of a particular car model, and which I want to probably look at, consideration of buying that car, and eventually purchasing that car when I go into my showroom or the online purchase, whichever is the medium which I want to go. And this is sort of substantiated by a study by BCG, where I think they did that last year in 22, where they said about 80% of the car buyers actually do a research online before getting into a dealership or any form of going into a place to go and buy that. And this is sort of also substantiated by a second fact, which I think is more revealing what we are trying to prove here as well, is that of those who actually go and do that, they look at a lot of specifications. They want to be informed about the specifications, what they're getting into. And which eventually was very well substantiated with some data. If you see below, just a small snippet, I don't know if it's an ISO for some, but effectively it says about 74% of the respondents said that a better vehicle details on a website of a car is something which is very helpful when they take a decision. And that's typically what we probably don't find that really happening all often. And that's where I think we thought the blending of the marketing content and the technical content is a very critical element. Some of these data points really prove that point. And this becomes even more relevant. And I've taken the automobile industry because all of us are also not only consumers in some form, or we also use these content in some form. But think of these from a use case perspective with respect to, say, a manufacturing heavy industries, where a lot of technical content is the marketing content, because the technology is the marketing content which goes for some of those. So actually, it's not just the line, the taglines or the emotional lines, as we call it, the selling emotions, but actually the core content is the marketing. The technical content is the marketing content in those cases. So essentially, what does a marketing team do? If I really put in a single word or a single line, they actually sell emotions, and that's something which and some of you marketers here, you will probably realize that is something which is probably very natural to them, and that's what it sort of shows up in a website, which is sort of a portal to the content. And if I just took a random automobile manufacturer's website today, and you see there that the image and the background and stuff like that, and it also talks about the joy of driving and things like that. It's a very emotion which is sort of getting displayed, and somebody like me who probably is connected to an emotion, I would probably want to go and actually invest in a car of this sort. So that's typically how my buying cycle is. But as I said, in my three profiles, myself, Manik, and Stefan, somebody like Manik can probably go into a bit more details, which talks about the models and also probably gets into some of the technical details. But somebody like Stefan here, who's got a German mind or heart, as we call it, and someone who really gets into the technical features, because the product and the technical documentation team effectively is selling features, and that's the key differentiator between the two. And if I really look at selling the features, and these are all in the website, and typically how this is sort of put in, and I've just taken one example just to sort of tell you how this the feature selling typically happens. So from this particular one, where I'm probably if I'm driving in an autobahn in Germany, I probably use a nice pair of suspension in a smooth road where I should be sort of having a cruise. And to do that, I may want to go and look at all the technical details in a website, and I may want to access that and get this content refreshed and updated periodically, and also be available for me to consume this data pretty much in the website. Now, with these two sort of or three things in the background, where the marketing content has some data which is sort of emotion which is available there, and then there is the technical content which is all about the specs and the features and sort of accentuate this into in a world of the heavy industries or even FSIs to some extent. This becomes even more sort of fuzzy as we go along. So to answer my first question, which I started off with, can the blending between the marketing and technical come together? The resounding answer is yes. And this is how a typical sample website I've just sort of used one of these templates, and you can actually design as many templates as you want and the way you want it from a content perspective. But fundamentally, a sample template or a sample website of how these two contents can really come together. A lot of content is sort of spread between the top, which is the header, and the navigation pane, which I think is pretty common. The marketing content is all about the emotion, which I spoke of, comes into sites, which is the AEM sites here, is all the color and the jazz, which you sort of see there. And a lot of technical content is also blended as we go along, and we'll probably see an example the next slide, when the technical content actually is getting moved from the AEM guides, which is the product which we look at. And this is typically, and what I'm showing you here is while the slight sharpness dip in the image, but fundamentally, and you'll see this in the demo which Manik is going to do in the next few minutes. But fundamentally, what we are trying to do here is that the blending is something, and this is a real site, by the way. So what I'm showing you is not imaginary or the PPT. It's actually a real site which we have built and which we have fused a few things which I'm going to talk about in the next minute or so. So what you see on the top, the hero image, which you see is all about the emotion, the marketing content for the ones who want to be the strongest. And imagine your scenarios and imagine your machinery sort of getting in there, where all your the vision and the mission of why the company is existing is all sort of there, or the machinery is there. And then comes the hard part, where somebody has gone ahead and authored these new models, the images of the new models, and some of the basic level of technical content which is available. And there is a technical comparison, which where probably I'm pulling data from some of my external sources. And this is again a feature which we launched a few months back, where we are also connecting to data sources, external data sources, which typically most of these companies have, especially large manufacturing and automobile companies, either in the form of a PIM or a PLM or any of the external data sources. It could be homegrown systems as well. So fundamentally, we are able to pull data from these sources, either author them in guides and pull data from external data sources into guides and actually make it into a nice authored template. And this is something which you see that published here in this website. So it's a single website which has got the marketing content, there's technical content, and also a content made out of an external source, which is sort of not residing in the content itself or not authored itself. So this entire blending is what we call as something which is the power of content fragments. So, ladies and gentlemen, now I'm just introducing the core concept of the content fragment. So what we went through this journey was all about the last few minutes is wanting to buy a car, not only just landing onto a marketing website, selling emotion to us, but also looking at the technical content in some way and the ability to blend them together, which probably was a bit fuzzy in these earlier years, particularly as I said, the twine shall never meet in the technical and the marketing space. Now we have the ability to do this with the power of content fragments, publishing using content fragments on using AEM guides. So that's the power of the AEM guides and the CF and the sites which I'm going to talk about. So what are the key points which I think I just want to give some takeaways here? You can actually design, create, and publish page independent content, which I think is the biggest benefit which you get out of this. Is design agnostic content. So what's important is the ability to have that page independent content, which can be pushed into a website, sometimes even on a mobile site, which you are doing, or even it's just pure JSON, which you can use in multiple other places. As I said, it's a pure content without style, and the layout. So content is available for you. Use it in multiple places, in multiple formats. It's just pure content which is sort of available to us. And then there is generation of this editorial content primarily, which is text and images. So and you will see Manik probably showing that to you as well. The ability to add the text and content and change some of it as we go along in that entire journey. And last but not the least, you deliver, as I said, in a JSON format as well, so that it's again agnostic to the style and the layout. So you have that content ability to go and take that into publish other places. So it could be as simple as publishing into your internal SharePoints and stuff like that. So how does the architecture look? While this diagram may look a bit daunting for some of you, those who are not exposed to AEM guides and the things in the architecture there, but I think the key takeaway, which I think I just want to call out, is if I were to really look at the top, which is the AEM guides, which is where what we have the ability, where we have from topic, which is and Manik will just quickly cover what topic is, but fundamentally topic is sort of the lowest grain which you can actually create in AEM guides, effectively done by the TechCom writers in guides. So we allow you to map the content to the CF model, and we will also talk about what a CF model is as we get into the demo as well. And think of, model as something which is basically allowing like a container which actually is going to take all the data which is getting from a topic into that container, and that is we sort of create those content fragments in our system, and then publish that into guides. So which is where that blending happens. So somebody creating and authoring content in using this content fragment model in guides, and that is pushed into the AEM sites, which is the website which people are using and consuming, and the using the browser, which you and me and people like me, Manik and Stefan, we're going to go and buy that car or buy that device and equipment which you've seen there. So that's typically how an architecture of this sort is looking like. And as I said, we are sort of using there are places where we're also looking at a variation of this, where, for example, you want to look at localized content. For example, the same content which is sort of created in one place in say in English, and there are these German content as well, and there's say French content as well. So you can have multiple variations, because, as I said, it's a design agnostic content. It's actually the content which matters. So with that, I think it's the ability for us to author in guides using that content fragment model, and then the ability to publish that in AEM sites in a blended format. That's the beauty of it. Now, what are the benefits? I think just a quick few, which I think is very, very critical. And this, I'm sure most of you relate to if you are part of either the marketing team or an IT team, which is part of that, or even TechCom writers. You'll understand that the ability to do flexible publishing, the ability to publish both types of content, which I think is the biggest benefit, because one has a very different team which is sort of building it, put the content in, and sort of which is creative, which is a bit more jazzy in some form. And the other one is more technical in nature, which is sort of somewhere sort of sitting in sort of the backend databases, as we call it. So all this is now coming together as a single experience. So that's the beauty of this flexible publishing. And I think the second point, which has been, many customers have come back to us saying that, hey, when is this going to come? Because we find the marketing and the tech talk / the product documentation team always having challenges with respect to collaboration, because obviously the .com or the website is typically owned by the marketing, and the tech com is always funneling into this. And while funneling, there is always this, this is the right version and this is not the right version, things like that. So imagine a place where you have somebody authoring it without really worrying about who's going to consume it and when it's going to be consumed. It's actually pushed into a website, which I think is going to be taken in. And this is again, a staging to production is something which can still be owned by marketing. So the collaboration is much more seamless. What's probably the most critical part. And then, as I said, this is content fragments are available, which can be reused by your own teams, and that's the beauty of it. So it's not just some of the content which is created is sort of consumed once, but it's actually content reuse, which is going to be from a single source, which is going to be used in multiple places and in multiple formats as well. And then there is obviously it helps in the faster time to market. I think it's a sort of a no-brainer to me. I think when you are able to do this, not only it's faster time to market, but also a more impactful time to market when it comes to these features. So what you saw from the website, which I mentioned, you have the ability to really come in, make people see both the content and sort of take decisions. So it's not only time to market, but also time to really realize some of the benefits of what you had. And then the most important piece is about the modifying the source content. So, for example, and Manik will show you as we go along, assuming that some content changes probably in your text specs. For example, the 35 mm the screw becomes probably a 40 mm screw. You change that in the source, which is your in your say your SAP or a PIM or a PLM, whichever system you hold the product data. The content will sort of flow all along into guides and into eventually publishing. So that's the entire end-to-end workflow is the ability of using the power of guides and the content fragment into sites. So that's the beauty of the modification of source content. So you don't have to really worry about what's changing where, and you have an entire control on the content which is going to do. So the entire life cycle is sort of managed and maintained. And then just move to the next one. Thanks. So where does it work? Because we primarily talked about one industry, and I thought I'd just go a little deep into the car and the automobile piece. But I think fundamentally where it can be used is banking and FSI. For example, you can have a lot of these financial products, which I think is there. You can have regulatory disclosures coming along with it. So, and which is more than I think any other industry which is more keen to have the data. The regulatory disclosures is sort of a critical element, because without it, you still need to sell the product as an emotion, as we had the car for, but you still need to put those regulatory disclosures, which typically will come from a technical writing team or a team which sort of puts that in that. So can we put that together? And that's we have seen some customers who have come to us to really talk about this use case where blending of these two content in a single website or a single page is very, very sort of something which you have seen, and I thought I'll put that in. Then there are these high techs. For example, imagine say the HPs or the Dells or Lenovo's, who probably say have a high performance computing server, for example. On the face of it, it'll have an image and things like what an HPC can do, what's the scale and stuff like that. But it has a lot of tech content which goes in, which is all about the technical details of that HPC server and how it's going to be really playing out for the customer who's going to buy that. So the fusion of these two is also an important aspect, which we are seeing that in high tech, which some of our customers or prospects have also been asking for. And then there is manufacturing, which I think is loads of use cases which can come out. Things like product overview plus technical data sheets, which I think is a great use case, which we have already seen playing out in some cases. And I think we probably have one or two of our customers who are probably using it in some form or the other. But more importantly, it's sort of I would say a no-brainer in this entire exercise, because that's where the marketing and technical content sort of starts to fuse together much better into a single content than multiple other places. And I have a sort of I would say a surprise price question for you. Besides these three use cases, if you have something more, you can put that on the chatbot. We will try and select the best use case or a couple of use cases there, and hand out a $50 Amazon voucher, assuming that Amazon reaches your place. And or if you feel that you have more which you want to think about and talk and tell us, you can also write to us at techcom@adobe, which is displayed in this site. So that's something which you can put in. We'll try and consume that and see which is the best one to really come out with a price for you as well. So this is very, very critical from a use case perspective, because as we go along, it will be a very critical element for us from a content perspective in terms of understanding where all these blending can be used. So I mean, 3, 4, 5 use cases we understand as we speak to our customers, but with you all around, as I said, it's a lunch and learn, so we learn along with you. So that's the dictum which I want to really go with. So what Stefan started off, I mean, it was a dream for a lot of us when we started off this product a few years back, with one intention: the marketing and technical content all managed out of a single platform. And that's probably a reality with Content Fragment publishing, as we see. So creating, managing, and publishing both the marketing and technical content in one platform in AEM is now a reality, guys. I think that's sort of the key takeaway. If I were to really summarize everything the last 25, 30 odd minutes which I've spoken, I think this is one line which I think is a key takeaway which you can actually walk with into the next piece, which is basically the demo, which is the how of how it's going to be done and how it is really done, and it's all real. So I just want to, before Manik, I just want to say that what we just showed you is all real, and we've sort of some good need of customers coming to us who will want to do this exercise. So what you're going to see the next few minutes is actually something which is working in action, which is live, which has gone in the previous release of ours. So what you're going to see is a real system which is going to be displayed to you in a nice looking fashion. And so what I showed you on the screen of the PowerPoint is something which is available for you to go and see and lay your hands on, and then we'll come back to Stefan to close the conversation with some question and answers as well. So with that, Manik, over to you, and hope to see some Content Fragment in action for us.
Sure. Thanks, Dhilip, for the wonderful context setting for this particular session. And hello, everyone. This is Manik. I'll be taking you through the working session for this particular capability, which Dhilip talked about in length. Before starting off with the demo, I'll reiterate few of the basic concepts or the basic elements of this particular capability. So essentially, there are 5 key elements for this particular capability. The first one, as Dhilip briefly pointed out, is the topic. So topic is the basic building block for this particular capability, or for that matter, any CCMS which you would be having. So you would be having your technical authors who would be writing content directly within this topic. So they would be authoring the content over there, or they would be sourcing that content from any other external system like the PIM systems, PLM systems, or for that matter, any external database. So Dhilip mentioned that there could be any external source from where the content can come into the guides platform, which is the topic, which is the basic building block for this particular capability, right? So here is where your technical authors would be working on. Then the second element for this particular capability, which is a very important element once again, is the content fragment model, right? So while you will be working on the topics to author your content, you would also be defining a model or a template for the content fragment, which would tell you what all fields would be there in the content fragment, what all things can be published into a content fragment. So this is the second building block of this capability. I would be showcasing each of these when I'll be actually showcasing a demo. I'm just reiterating a few of those right now. Then how would the topic and content fragment talk to each other? That would be done through the mapping file. So we have in place a mapping which tells the system that what all elements from a topic has to go to which particular field within a content fragment model. So that is defined at the mapping level. So we have in place in this particular product a few sample mapping files which have been shipped with the product, but the customers and the users can create as many mappings between these two elements as they want to. So these are the three basic elements. Then we come to the actual element which was in question right now, which is the content fragment. So once you have done with these three particular elements, you would want to publish your topic elements into a content fragment. So when Dhilip showcased some of the sample websites wherein some marketing content was being fused with some of the technical content, actually the technical content was coming directly via guides through the content fragments. So this is the fourth crucial element for this overall capability. Then the last bit, as Dhilip pointed out, and he showcased a few sample websites, is the actual AEM site. So in your organization, let's say a marketing team is managing that website, or for that matter, a brand team is managing that particular AEM site. So the content fragment which has been published via guides can be reused in any of the AM sites which your company or your organization is using. So yeah, with these five basic elements in place, while I'll be showcasing this demo, I'll be using these terms very often. So I just wanted to make sure that you are clear with these few basic elements of this capability. So let's just jump into this exciting demo. Yeah. So this is my guides platform. I think some of you would already have seen this particular screen. Some of you would be seeing this screen for the first time. But here it is. It is the topic, which the first element which I talked about while I was explaining the last slide. So here is where your technical authors would actually be authoring the content. So in this particular screen, which you see right now, which is a topic, and I've already created this topic with the name of car comparison. So while we'll be talking about and we'll be taking you through one of the use case of manufacturing. So in this topic, this particular table, which is giving some of the specifications of three models of the car, actually this table is coming from an external product information management system. I have used Salsify over here, but it can be any PIM system, it can be any product life cycle management system, or for that matter, it can be any external database from which you could source your content. So the source of truth in that case would be the external system. Then the second table which you see over here, wherein I have again put in the same model which I was quoting over here with some images, with some more description, with some NCAP ratings. So this is the content which actually I have authored directly in guides. So as a technical author, I can either source the content as I mentioned, and I showcase this table to you, or I can directly author the content over here like I have done with this respect to this particular table. So this was the topic, which was the first element as I mentioned in the previous slide. Now I'll quickly jump on to the second element which I talked about, which was the content fragment model. If I go to the second tab over here, so I think again a lot of you would have already seen this screen. This is a generic AEM screen. You go to the tools over here. Then when you move to the assets, over here you see one of the options called content fragment models. I go into this, let's say I go into the folder. I've already created a few content fragment models. So first what I'll do is I'll open one of those which I had already created. And as I mentioned, content fragment model is basically a template for a content fragment to be published, right? So what does a template actually mean? So over here, what you see that I have this particular multi-line text kind of a box coming in over here. Then I have another box which is over here. I can drag and drop multiple such dialog boxes, and I can give some of the property names to it. So what this model is doing is it is telling my topic what all things can actually be published to a content fragment. So in this case, technical specification is one of the labels. So the table which I showed you while I was showcasing the topic is one of the things which can actually be published to this particular content fragment. Then models, wherein I showed you another table that could also be published to this particular content fragment model. there can be n number of fields, there can be n number of properties which can be added to this particular content fragment model as per your use case. The most important element over here, what I'll do is I'll delete this one and I'll come back to the one which I had already created. So if you see, there is this field known as property name, right? Which in this case, I've just kept a sample name called model underscore table. And in the first box over here, if you see the property name, I have kept as car underscore comparison. So what does this property name mean? I talked about the third element when I was talking about the elements, which was mapping file, right? So while I showcased you that particular topic, which had multiple tables, in my case, there were two tables there. How would the system know that which particular field would that content be published to? That would be defined by property name, and this property name is actually fed into the mapping, which is there in the system, which tells that, let's say, I'll again jump back to the topic, and let's say this is one of the elements of my topic, which is the first table. I would firstly have to specify within my mapping file that this table has to go into, let's say, this particular property which corresponds to technical specifications, right? So essentially what this content fragment model is doing is giving a template to the content fragment. And what is a mapping file doing? Mapping file is relating this topic or any element within this topic, for in this case this table or this table, or there could have been any paragraph, there could have been any other image, it could be anything within a topic, right? It could be a complete topic in itself also. So the mapping file would be a linkage between this topic and this content fragment model, right? So there could have been any changes made to this template, but for the sake of this demo, I have already created these two fields. I'll just quickly save that. Lunch and Learn is the name of the content fragment model, which I just showcased you. The name of the topic is car comparison, which was again the first element. I'll jump to this particular slide once again. So I've talked about the topic, I've talked about the content fragment model, I've talked briefly about mapping also. The mapping file is shipped with the product. It can be edited as per the user's need. It is basically a text-based file which is just linking these two. I'll not be showcasing that right now, but the mapping which I have right now in place is linking these two tables with my content fragment model, which I just showcased you. So we are done with the first three elements. The fourth element is actually the content fragment model, right? So what I'll do is I'll show you how do we publish a content fragment from this particular topic. So over here, car comparison, which is the name of my topic, is listed over here as well, right?
Manik,
What I'll do is,
if I may quickly interrupt you. In this editor, there was a question from the audience if you can toggle the element text. Maybe you can just quickly show that.
sure, yeah. So what I've done over here is I've switched on the tags view. So over here, what you see is there is one simple table, which is the first one, and then there is a second simple table, which is the second one, and these tables would, or these elements would actually be mapped to the content fragment model which I had showed you previously, right? So
Thank
that
you,
is
Manik.
what is being done over here. And what I'll do next is, this is my topic. I'll go to the context menu of this topic. Then the second last option which you see, which is publish as, you'll see an option stating content fragment. So now that we are done with the content fragment model, we are sorted with the mapping, we have created a topic, and we know what needs to be published to the content fragment. So I'll simply click on this. A basic dialog will get opened up, which is asking me to put the path. This path actually can be anything in the AEM assets repository. For the sake of this demo, I have chosen a folder path which I've already created, which is saying content fragments. So I'll select that. What it tells me is that whatever I publish would get published in this particular folder, right? Then the next field over here is a title, which is asking me to give a title to the content fragment which would get published. So let's say I use actual demo as the title of that particular content fragment. So this particular title would get published within content fragments folder, and this would be the file name for that particular content fragment. Now the fourth option which you see over here is again very straightforward. Now that you have understanding about the elements, this is asking me to select the model. Now, as I showed you previously, I've already created that model, which is lunch and learn in this case. So I select that. What it is telling me is that for me to publish this particular topic, use this particular model, which had two fields as I showed you. Then the last bit is the mapping file, which again I explained you. There are a few sample mapping files which are shipped with the product. I'm using just one of them, which so I've used this sample example with XPath. So actually this mapping is telling me or telling the system that these two tables have to be fed into this particular model, and I told you how do we do that, right? So I don't need to overwrite it because it is a new content fragment which I'm going to publish. What I'll do is I'll simply click on create. So I've done that. So it says that actual demo content fragment has been published. So now how do we see where our content fragment is, right? So you see over here, we have a right panel. If you go over here, so there is a section known as fragments. If you click on that, you would see all the content fragments which have been published for this particular topic in the past. Some of them I've already created in the past, which are being listed over here. But the one which I just created, which is the actual demo, is being listed over here. Now I'll just show you how the content fragment is going to look like. Yeah, so see. So I showed you when I was showing you the content fragment model of lunch and learn, there were two fields. One was technical specifications, another one was models, right? So you see the content which I was showcasing you in the topic has simply gone into this content fragment model by virtue of the mapping which we had, right? So now we don't need to do anything over here. I was just showcasing you how this content fragment is looking in reality. Now I'll just close this one because we are done with the content fragment. So I'll quickly come back to this particular slide. So we have talked about these three things. I've also published a content fragment, which was the fourth crucial piece of this particular capability. Now we would be moving on to the last and the most important experience capability of this feature, which is the working AEM sites, right? Firstly, what I'll do is I'll show you the AEM site which Dhilip had just showcased you. Over here, if you see, there is this header again, which is, let's say, managed by your brand team or your marketing team. There's a pitch which is coming over here, which is actually selling emotions, which was quoted by Dhilip as well. Then there is a carousel image. There are three images which are again governed by your brand team, that what should you showcase on your AIM site, along with some phrases which are coming over here. Then if you see, there's another element which is coming on this particular AIM site, which is why us. I mean, it can be fast delivery, quality of service. This is something which is coming again from, let's say, a customer service team, right? But you don't see any of the tables which I had showed you, the technical specifications of the models which this particular AIM site wants to project, right? So till this step, everything has been managed so far by the marketing team, wherein they are controlling what has to come directly from the marketing agencies or the creative writers or the creative designers. But now the next step is, I'll just quickly click on edit. So if you see, you can bring in any AIM element over here. It can be a content fragment, it can be a paragraph, it can be a text, it can be an image, it can be a hero image, anything of that sort. But for the sake of this demo, what I have done is, and what my intent is, that let's say my organization wants that after this particular image, the models which I showed you in my topic has to come in a tabular format, and that has to be sourced directly from guides, right? Similarly, after this particular area, wherein let's say I would have talked about some of the models, I might want to cover some technical specifications of those models, which again is coming from guides, and in turn that particular content is coming from some external source into the guides. What we'll do, we have two content fragments which we have added into this AIM site. We'll just click on this. You see this first option, which is saying configure this particular content fragment. If I click on this, what I'll do is I'll select the content fragment which I had published just a while back, which was this actual demo. Let me select this. Right, I have done that. And as you might remember that in this particular content fragment which I had published, there were two properties or two fields which actually got populated. So I'll click on this elements. I'll click on, let's say, so I think you would remember that these were the two properties which were filled up by my topic. I'll select, let's say, models, because I want to, let's say, display the models first. I'll quickly click on go. So see, first table comes up, and I think Dhilip touched upon one very important point, that content fragment is content without design or layout, right? So the design which you see over here, this blue background, shades of gray, this is actually getting inherited from the CSS or the design which you have applied to this particular AIM site. So while I was authoring my content, I was not worrying about how that particular element would look like on the AIM site, because I knew the AIM site CSS would handle that automatically, right? The next thing is, let's say I've already covered the models. Now I would want to add the technical specifications. I'll again select the same content fragment. I'll go to the elements. I'll again select technical specifications this time. Let's say I do done. So you see, I'll go to the preview mode of this website now. I have to see, this is the header which was already there. Then this is a carousel image which was already there. But now two elements have come in directly from guides without marketing team or brand team or whoever is managing this particular website manually copy pasting content from here and there, and then thinking about whether that content is stale or not, right? So this was the first table. I'll go back to this guides platform. So you see, I've just reordered it. It could have been in the same order where but I've reordered that. So this was the first table, this was another table, and you see both these in a very good design and layout manner, because this was inherited from the AIM site, right? So this is what the capability is all about from start till the end. But there was another important point which was touched upon by Dilip, that since the source of truth is guides, the topic which your technical team is authoring, so let's say there is a use case wherein your team actually thinks that something or some sort of information has changed since they last published that particular content fragment. Let's say the name of this model 1 changes to, let's say, model ABC, just for reference, and let's say I name it ABC over here also. And for that matter, let's say there was a conscious call which was taken that this model is no longer having 45-liter fuel capacity. What I'll do is I'll delete this particular point which I had mentioned over here. So I'll go back here without publishing or doing anything. I'll show you model 2 is written over here, model 2 is written over here, and 45-liter fuel capacity is written over here, right? So I go back over here. I have deleted all these things. I'll simply save this particular topic. And what I'll do is over here, wherein you were seeing all the content fragment, since the content has changed, so my technical authors would just republish this content fragment, and it says actual demo republished. And when I go over here on my AIM site and I actually reload this site, the content should get updated. See, so the name of the car changes to model ABC. There was this line item which was saying that 45-liter fuel capacity is there for model 2. That has changed over here. Similarly, the name of model 1 has changed to model ABC on this table. So if you look at it from the overall picture, everything was done at the guides end, because that was the source of truth. So anybody who is managing this AIM site need not worry about manually copy pasting things and then fretting about it that whether that's stale data or not. So that was a complete story. I have covered all these three elements. This was the fourth element, and I've also showcased you a working AIM site. While this AIM site which I've showed you is a basic looking site because that's what I have created for this demo, but it could have been a very elaborative AIM site wherein instead of, let's say, this particular table, it could have been technical specifications of any of the cars, or for that matter anything, let's say in multiple paragraphs, that could also have been created over here in guides and then published as a content fragment and reused in any of the AIM sites as per the user's use case, right? So with this, I'll wrap up this demo and I'll quickly hand over this to Stefan to further continue the session.
Thanks, Manik. That was a very interesting demo. Okay, then I will stop the recording now, and I keep the chat open for a few more minutes, and then I stop broadcasting, so you can get the recording in the coming days then.